So everybody's here for the Ash framework talk, right? Just want to make sure. Okay. I was not predicting to be a lot of people here, but that's fine because to me this is a huge secret that I actually use every single day when I'm writing code. So it's good if it stays a small secret, not a big secret. So yeah, again, this is called Ash framework. Do more with less. I'm going to show you guys why that is. And also feel free to ask questions as I'm doing the presentation. It's fine. Let's keep it, pretty casual, right? So just some background, who am I? So I'm an American living in Hong Kong for just over 10 years, in China total for about 15 years. I worked at Motorola, Credit Suisse, Crypto.com, and a lot of startups, right? So most of my time was building systems from scratch, right? Gathering requirements, running the servers, basically doing everything. So I've been doing a lot of different things. And because of that, Pact, Manning, Pragmatic Programmers, and a couple other books companies actually come to me and ask me to review their tech books for them, make sure things are working well. And I also have several podcasts. You may have heard of them before. If you're using Rust, there's Rust Station. If you're doing things in Elixir or Erlang, I have Beam there, done that, and Elixir Mix. And also I did quite a bit of Flutter, so I was doing Flying High with Flutter. And because of all this, I actually have my own consulting company called Plangora, where we use Elixir, Flutter, and Rust. Have you guys heard of Elixir, Flutter, and Rust? Maybe Elixir, probably not, right? It's kind of you've heard of it, just those two guys. Wow, so I'm very happy to hear that. That's also a secret sauce of mine, so that's part of it. So I figured that people probably don't know what these technologies are, at least Elixir. So let's start from the beginning. Erlang. Who uses WhatsApp? Who uses WeChat? Who's ever heard of Cisco routers before? Who's ever used Facebook Messenger? Okay, so then you guys have all touched basically Erlang. So Erlang is this basically wonderful technology out there that was made to run telephone switches, made by a company called Ericsson, which is a company based out of Sweden. They had a problem, right? When you have a telephone switch, you have to work, right? You have to make the call, right? If people call 911, 110, whatever, it has to actually connect. And you cannot go down, right? So they couldn't figure out how to do this part very easily. So they're not making their own language and virtual machine. It's basically like JVM, but it's called the Beam. That's why I have the podcast called Beam There, Done That, all about the Beam, which is their virtual machine. What makes Erlang and the Beam very great is it has a lot of characteristics that are very, very, very important for today, right? Which is about fault tolerance, right? Being able to actually have failures. So whenever you have a phone call and that phone call breaks, you don't want everybody else's phone call on that switch to go down. And of course, something great happens, maybe, I don't watch soccer, but I think was it Ronaldo or something, when if he scores a big goal, you want to call somebody to celebrate that one. You have a lot of people calling at the same time, but they'll be able to actually handle those kind of phone calls, handle that kind of stuff. Now, Erlang has a problem, which is that it's not very beautiful. Who's ever seen Prolog before? Yeah, so it's kind of like, how do you say that? Only its mother can love it, kind of. It's not the most beautiful language out there. So Erlang looks a lot like Prolog. I can read it. It's hard for me to kind of write it from scratch, but I can basically read it. Now that brings us over to Elixir, right? So Erlang came out in about the early 80s to solve the telephone switch problem. And Elixir came out 2010 or 2000 something, sometime in the 2000s. And it's basically, looks a lot like Ruby. Why? Because the creator of Elixir actually came from the Ruby side. And he took all the good stuff of Erlang, which is fault tolerance, handling lots of concurrency, all those kinds of goodness, and then put a nice modern kind of twist to the language. And also some other goodness to it too, like actually having a very good build system. So before it's actually using, if you want to use Erlang, you have to actually use make. Now they have their own build tool called Mix, which does a lot of things kind of like NPM does. And then finally, one more thing to also know about too is OTP. What is OTP? OTP is a set of libraries and design patterns to make systems become fault tolerant. So something ever crashes, you just restart it. That's kind of the basics of this whole thing. Now that brings us to what is Ash, right? So Ash is kind of like, I like to think about it like a glue. It sticks all these very important libraries and the things that people actually do together, right? So in Elixir, you have something called ecto, which is like, I forgot what it's called in Python, right? But like an ORM for you. Phoenix, which is kind of like Flask, what it is to Python, so it's a web framework. And a couple other libraries also puts together too, and it puts it all together in a nice, easy to understand DSL that people can just read it and just understand what's going on. In a minute, I'll show you guys some of the code. Now, the important thing to know is that when you're building a system, you're going to have code here, there, all these different places, right? Well, what Ash does is it actually tends to put all of that code into basically one file. So if you have something like a post, like a blog post, everything related to that post will be right into that file. Rather than having to look there, like I remember when I'm working with Node.js, I have to look in so many different directories, it just goes forever. Especially with Java, same thing. You have to look all over the place to find what you're looking for. For here, it's basically one file for the most part. 99% of the time, it's just inside the one file, which is just talking about that specific file itself. Now, the cool thing is that you have these things called actions. Actions is basically just like creating, updating, deleting. It could also be some more things. I'll show you something else today. You have your attributes, which is like your fields, like first name, last name, role, this kind of things like that. And then you have extensions. You can have things like APIs. So if you want to have a GraphQL, JSON, even your own custom flavor, you can do that. Along with authorization. We're going to get more into authorizations later on. So actually making sure that people can do what it is that they want to do. That's super important. So here's an example of a resource. So you have at the top, use resource. That's basically injecting some code for you to kind of make things easier. You have your attributes. So it has a primary key that's a UUID. You have a title, which is a string, and it cannot be nil, which is null. So it cannot be nullable, cannot be nil. You have a status, which is a atom. So think about an atom kind of like a symbol. It's like a constant. So it can either be draft or published. And by default, it's draft. Now, you also have relationships, right? So foreign keys, how do things relate to each other? So in this case, it belongs to an author, and it has many comments. Who has worked with Rails before? Yeah, so it's probably very familiar to you with this kind of stuff. And then finally, at the bottom, you see the actions, right? Read, destroy, update, create, and then have an extra one over there called publish, right? So the accept is what things you can actually change. And in this case, you don't change anything. You don't actually accept anything. It'll just change the status from unpublished to published. So it's a pretty easy kind of step to do. Now, the coolest thing about Ash that I find to be really, really interesting is about the authorization part, the policies, right? Who can do what? Because the problem is when you do this kind of thing, and you have multiple interfaces to your system, say you have a web, you have a mobile app, how do you actually manage these things so it's an easy to understand place, right? Where should it go? How can I be sure that these things are actually being called and not being skipped? What if I need to add another interface? Where should I put it, right? Because most of the times people will block them at say, the interface kind of end, right? Is that the right thing to do? I mean, I don't know. How do we handle this kind of thing? The other thing, too, is that it verifies that the current actor, so that means the person who's doing the action has permission to actually do the action at all. The other really cool thing, too, is that it'll actually alter database queries for you, so that way you don't even need to worry about this person has actually the ability to actually read the data, which I'll also show you in a second. And again, it's placed inside the resource, so that way you can easily see what's going on with that particular resource, who can do what action to that kind of resource. And the good thing is that if you don't think about letting in somebody doing something, it's automatically going to deny them, which is probably most important, right? You don't want people doing things that you never even thought about. So here's an example of policies, right? So the very first one's probably the most important one, which is that if you have an admin, you want them to be able to probably do anything, right? So in that case, bypass means that it's not going to go down any more down the chain. It always checks top to bottom. So if you bypass, that means that it's only going to check over here if it's correct, right? So if there's an admin, so that means that the user has an attribute called role, and it's set to be admin, then it means authorize if always means that whatever they want to do, they can do. They can create, they can read, they can update, they can publish, unpublish, anything they want to do. If that's not the case, they're not an admin, then we go down to the next one, which is the action type, right? Because you can have more than one action type. Let's say you want to be able to read archived and read unarchived posts. But in any case, any read, as long as it's either the status of that blog post is set to be published, or they're the author, right? They have to actually be the author of that post. In that case, the author can read unpublished posts, their own unpublished posts only. And of course, people can create as long as they're logged in. That would be the actor present. And then finally, updating and destroying. You can only update or destroy your own posts, which is very important. Now, another really cool thing too, which is related to the policies, is field policies. Field policies are really powerful because in this day and age, you don't want data leakage, right? So it's the same thing. By default, if you don't say they have access to a field, they got like the role, the name, phone number, they won't have access to it. It'll just be blank. Well, it could be blank, but usually it's going to be called forbidden. So that way you know it's been forbidden, that they don't have access to it. But in APIs, you can return just a null. So that way they have no idea what it is. And within Ash itself, I don't have a way to show this, but what's actually really cool, I did a podcast called Beam There Done That with the creator of Ash. He goes more in depth into this. He will actually block it at the database query. So basically, it'll come up as null in the database query if you don't have access to it. So you can't even check for things if you want to. Like, you can't try to say, is this user actually part of the database? Are they actually in the table? It'll actually block you from checking that if you don't have access to this particular field policy. So here's an example of some field policies, right? So basically, anybody can read the name and role of a user, but the email and phone number is only readable by if that's actually who you are. So this is very powerful stuff that if you guys are working with things that have like sensitive data. Actually, when I'm building the demo, I couldn't get this thing to work properly because of something. I'll show you guys later what that problem was, but it actually hurt me. I couldn't actually move forward through it, but then I figured out what it was, so it's actually quite powerful. And now the other thing that's really cool too, again, because everything revolves around the policies, the field policies, and the actions, adding APIs is just simple. You know, they have a package for JSON, it's called JSONApi, and also for GraphQL. I mean, it's super simple. And again, it uses already the existing policies and existing field policies, so that way there's nothing you have to worry about. It just works out of the box. I know you guys are excited, right? So we have the next section over here, which is all about the demo. So this demo, I just got working this morning because I actually had a small issue with something. So on the right, you have this is an admin who's logged in. On the left is just a normal user. And for this one, we're going to look at posts. So each one's looking at posts. So you can see on the right-hand side, admins can see draft posts and published posts. And this published post is by the admin. And on the left, we have an unpublished post by the author and a published post by the admin, right? Because if I'm a normal user, I can only see published from other people, and I can see everything on mine. And on this side, again, I can see everything. That's why I can see their unpublished post along with my published post and also my unpublished post. And now going over to, and then also over here again, an admin has to be able to publish and unpublish. And also deleting, they can do all that kind of stuff. And you can see over here that they cannot. And actually, I'm just going to show you real quick what that actually looks like. All I do is there's a simple if statement with a can. So if this user can publish, then we actually show the link to them. It doesn't matter if they're an admin or not, because my policies will actually block it or approve it. And same thing going over to users is actually really more interesting. So over here, we have a user who's logged in. They can see themselves, they can see their own phone number, their own name, but they cannot see the admin's phone number and name. Now, if the admin goes to the user section, they can see everything. because of the policies. And I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. So that's over here. So I have this simple render data function. Just very quick hack, right? So I wrap the phone number in the email with that. And the way Elixir works is that we work with pattern matching. Who's ever worked with pattern matching before? So then you know exactly what I'm talking about, yeah. So we just pattern match. So if it's a forbidden field, basically they don't have access to it. I just reply back with these 3 asterisks. Otherwise, I just render the data. So the way Elixir works is it goes top, bottom, right? Is this pattern match? If so, then do it. If not, go to the next line. So if we actually have access to the data, it'll just be rendered directly. Now, as I said with the API, it's actually pretty simple. I'm just going to stretch this, or no, I'm going to go to the screen. Let's see, GQL. So coming back over here, right? I can get the posts, I can get the user. All this stuff was generated for me automatically based on the actions. And so like for instance over here, the posting, right? I just had to configure just a little bit of stuff, not too much. So for instance, for GraphQL, I just had to define a type, and I define queries, right? Because I can choose which actions I want to actually expose as API. So for instance, I did a get post, I did a list post, both of them go to read, because read can act as both a get and also a get, meaning a get a single record, or it can act as something like a list, like get lots of records. And then we have mutations, right? So if I want to create a post, publish a post, whenever I want to do something with a post that actually edits it, that's called a mutation. And then the same thing over here for JSON API, have to make a type. I also give it a base path. And finally also, you know, the different actions, get, index, post, patch, delete. I think everybody over here has probably done REST before, so you know about this stuff. And this one will actually automatically include a swagger. Maybe not this one. Let's see, what is the swagger? API swagger? Yes. API/JSON. Yes, so here's all my swagger. So that way you can just give it to them automatically. Now the really cool thing, I haven't worked too much with this in over here. I'm a big fan of GraphQL because it's all typed. So I want to just go back to that one and show you something that's actually really cool. So if I want to list all of the posts, automatically have built in is that you can choose how you want to sort it. I didn't do anything. It just gave me that ability off the top by itself. And then also, should be, filter too. Also out of the box, you can also do complex filtering, right? So doing this stuff by hand is probably not fun. I tried a little bit, but this is much more featureful. So you can do a lot more things with it. You can even define your own filters too, and you know, create all kinds of crazy stuff if you like. So that's basically it for my presentation, right? It's very, very small, but you know, I wanted to kind of show you guys some of the more powerful stuff. I mean, with this, it's given me like a lot of power. Like what's taken me months before is now taking me weeks to kind of build out because, you know, I have to worry about, you know, security, things like that. I have the filtering, I can do the APIs, all this kind of stuff just works just out of the box. So yeah, that's basically the end of my talk. Short and sweet. So any questions about this? I'm happy to go dig in even deeper. If you guys wanted to see more about, you know, what does a post look like? How do you stop certain things? So for instance, here, actually, there's actually some more cool things in here too, actually. I wanted to show you something else now that we're here. This is also kind of cool too, is that when you define a create action, you can also say relate the actor, right? So if you want to be able to rate, you know, again, this post is created by this person, and this relate actor function will automatically set up that relationship for you. One more thing too is the comments, which is also pretty cool too. If you want to make a comment, you can create something that's an argument for the post. So we want to comment on a specific post. And they have this thing called managed relationship. This managed relationship is super, super powerful. I'm not going to be able to go in depth to what it can do. But one of the cool things that it can do off the top of its head is it'll rely on the existing policies for a post. So you cannot comment on a post, even if you have the ID, that you actually don't have access to even read it. So managed relationship will actually use the existing reading policy to make sure you cannot do something that you are not allowed to even see it. I see some nodding of heads, so there's some probably hitting a bone with some previous work you guys have done before. We're trying to block things like that. So that's why the policies and the field policies is really, really powerful. It's hard to really show you guys in like 20 to 30 minutes about what you can do with it. You have to actually start to use it so you can really understand the power of it. What is less and what is more? So I mean, you're talking about my tagline, right? Well, what I want to say is that you're actually writing less and getting more from it, right? Because if you want to define your own pagination, it will take you some time. Have you ever done pagination before? It takes a while, right? Because usually I end up copying and pasting old code from old projects to new projects. And over here, I mean, here's all of my actions to do CRUD. There's not much to do, right? And once I define my policies, then I can feel safe that I'm not, I'm not letting things leak out that shouldn't be leaked. So I'm writing less code than I was before. I'm being less defensive, and I'm getting more value out of it and being able to sleep more because I don't have to worry about did I check that? Did I do that? Am I doing things properly? I mean, this whole file itself is only 76 lines, and that's including some spaces in here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So actually, that's a good point. Do you want to see the query, right? Okay. How it works at a database level is the way the policies work. Policies come in two flavors. One of the flavors, I believe, is called filter-based, and that's what that is. So whenever you do a read query, there's a filter actually that's being applied. So what it does is let's specifically look at the post, right? That's the big one. So they have these things called expressions. That's what this thing EXPR, right? Expression is really cool. It's a sub-language of Elixir that lets you run in more than just Elixir code. This actually gets translated into SQL code. I think it's easier if I actually show you, because then you actually can see what's going on. Otherwise, I just keep blabbing on. That's why I'm asking that, feel free to talk, right? Make it bigger? Ugh, light mode. Ugh, it's going to burn your eyes. Are you sure? Oh, is it? Oh, I'm so sorry. How do you change it to light mode? How do you do the theme thing? Preferences? Settings? Oh, no, it's themes, right? Ugh. I always feel like it burns my eyes. Light? Is this better? Oh, thank you guys for letting me know. Apologies about that. Let me just show you real quick. All right, so here's going back to the post, right? So here's the post. Just a normal SQL post, normal SQL query, right? Directly getting from the table. All right. Sorry, this is actually loading the data. Give me a second. This one. So you can see in here, it's actually modified the query to say where the status is, and that's the first one, published, or the author ID is, and that's the current actor's ID in the database. So having the policies will actually alter your database so that way you don't leak information. You can get very, 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 very complicated with these policies, trust me. Because this is just a simple toy app that I made for you guys today because I don't want to make it too complicated. But I have a system that I just created with somebody else, and we have this idea of we have members, and members have caregivers, and the caregivers have access to their people who they care for, their profile, right? So you only want to be able to update, for the profile to be updated by themselves, by their caregiver, or by an admin. And it can get very complicated, but thanks to that language and the expressions, it makes life very easy to check this stuff. So it's called Ash Framework, and this is called the policy feature. Yeah, so specifically it's this thing over here. Yeah, Ash Policy Authorizer. Probably because they're thinking maybe they'll make up another one in the future, maybe. I don't know. Yes, yes. So, well, originally the backend's called a simple backend, which is in-memory database. But in this case, I'm using Postgres. They do have support for MySQL and anything else. I think they also have support for some of the like Oracle and stuff like that too. So you just swap out the data layer and it just works. So that's the other thing about the expressions is that expressions are a sub-language. Why? Because then you can run them as Elixir code. You can run them in a different database. It'll just get translated over. Yeah. Yeah, we can test all this stuff. I mean, I have some tests over here, not too many, because it was just a toy project. So over here, I got 5 tests that run. The cool thing about Elixir is that how many cores you have on your machine, it'll run 1 test file per core at the same time. So if you have a 40-core machine, it'll run 40 test files at the same time. I mean, if you want to see something like that, I mean, I have my own like internal ERP system that I run. So this is actually production code that I actually run right now. Here's my test suite that I run. 1.3 seconds for 184 tests. And this including some policy testing in there too. So for instance, let's see, not this one. For instance, I can make sure that users can or cannot read certain clients, certain projects, so that way we don't have kind of leakage of information. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I want, is it possible to state it here that if the metadata is supposed to be PII,
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. There's a lot of things you can do like that. Actually, like I said, the issue I ran into before is that, well, I can't show you right now. It's like time is up, but yeah, you can do that. That's a good. That's a good question. hire me and I'll answer your question. No, this is a good question. I don't have an answer for you, but I can figure it out. The team for Ash is very responsive. So if you really want to use this one and you have this kind of problem, we can find a solution. So I wouldn't really worry about that. You don't always have to use expressions. You can also make a module and just write code. So if you need to reach out to somewhere else and do it, you can also do it too.